We're just going to have everybody introduce themselves. Is that okay? Love seeing the cool glasses as a glasses person. So thank you for wearing cool glasses, people.
And
Run
good
and get some.
afternoon, everyone.
Yes,
My name is
Elia.
Billy, and I am the founder and organizer of Bookstore Romance Day. And I just wanted to welcome you to this, our final session of the day. We do have 4 more panels happening tomorrow. So if you haven't signed up for any of those, you might want to do that. I want to take a moment to thank you all for being here. Thanks to our sponsors, especially to Bramble Books, who is our headline sponsor this year. They have helped to make all of this possible. I will be dropping links in the chat for ordering books from Lair Books, for ordering audiobooks through Libro FM. There may be some other things as I think of them. And if you have questions for any of the authors, please make sure to put them in the Q&A so that they don't get lost in the chat. And with all of that being said, I am turning things over to our lovely host for the afternoon, Kathy Burnette.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is probably my 3rd or 4th Bookstore Romance Day panel been able to do these past few years, and each one just keeps getting better. So I'm so excited to be here today. I own Lair Books in South Bend, Indiana. We aim to develop empathy and build a stronger community centered around the discussion of inclusive literature. Our goal is to create an environment where traditionally underrepresented voices feel welcome to participate, to speak up, ask questions, and engage in conversation. This requires a harassment-free and inclusive environment that recognizes the inherent worth of every participant. And we invite all those who participate today to help us create a safe and positive experience for everyone. I am so excited to be on this panel today. Something that we were just chatting about last year turned into an actual panel, so that's pretty cool. Elia, I think we were doing a panel on older protagonists. Was that last year's?
I'm not sure if it was older protagonists or I think it was road trips.
Road trips, because you did
Hairpin curves, that's right.
Right. So we did hairpin curves and we were just talking about different things in books. And I have always, Thien-Kim Lam had a book box where you could get a book and a toy. And I was like, that is the coolest thing I had ever heard of. And so we started talking about it. And that's how this panel was born. And thanks for Billy to going out and finding these great panelists that we get to talk to. Each person will introduce themselves. We want to thank Bramble Books for being the overall sponsor for Bookstore Romance Day, my favorite day and my favorite month, because we do romance all month. Our store is actually arranged in an order of things I like, and the very first section is romance, because yay for romance. All right, so we're going to go around and have each author or author set introduce themselves, starting with Thien-Kim.
Hi, everyone. I'm Thien-Kim Lam, and gosh, what do I say about myself? There's so many things. My debut is called Happy Endings. That's probably the one that we're going to talk about the most because the main character, she sells sex toys. I'm a sex educator, and I like to call myself a sex toy expert. I've been talking about sex toys for over 20 years, and I'm really excited to be here. And I'll pass it to Elia.
Thanks so much. I'm Elia Winters. I write geeky, kinky, cozy erotic romance. And I am a sex toy reviewer. On my blog, I've reviewed, I don't know if it's close to or over 200 toys over the years. And so I'm a huge aficionado and write a lot of them in my books and help people pick out what works for them. And I'm so happy to be here.
I guess that's us next. First of all, quick disclaimer / apology. Our favorite romance bookstore in Portland, Grand Gesture, needed last minute panelists because some of the panelists for their programming today had COVID exposure. So we're like, yes, we will help you out. But that meant we had to run across the street from the public library to Grand Gesture's back room where we are Zooming from. So if someone opens up the door looking for like a bunch of books back stock, I apologize. They were really nice to let us Zoom in from here. So Grand Gesture Books in Portland, if you're ever in Portland, super cool, Black owned, queer friendly, wonderful bookstore. And I am Karelia Stetz-Waters. My breakout romance was Satisfaction Guaranteed, which was about a sexually inexperienced woman who inherits a bankrupt sex toy store, and have always had toys in my stories. And the last two books that I got to write, I got to co-author with my wonderful wife here.
I'm Fay Stetz-Waters. I use she, her pronouns, and we are the authors of Second Night Stand and recently out, Taste the Love. And I am a sex toy user.
Same. All right, so I had 3 books that I read that I thought we could focus on, but really we could talk about whatever we want to talk about. That's the beauty of these kind of panels. We're not stuck with just these books. So first we have Happy Endings. This is my introduction to sex toys in books, so that was pretty awesome. And in the book, she's also a sex toy educator. Would you say, Thien-Kim? Like, so that's pretty awesome. And here is Elia. I use combustion as yours because she makes the sex toys in this book, and I thought it was so cool. And this one starts out with a bang, man. Like, we just open up, we're in it already. So I was very excited about that. And then we have Satisfaction Guaranteed, and there's a sex shop in this one. So I thought, yeah, this is really cool because these books are all different and we're looking at sex in different ways. And how cool is that? Because sex should be something that we talk about and celebrate all the time. There's nothing shameful about it. So I'm so excited to be doing this with you today. And so if you want to give us a little bit about how you came to write this book. So let's start there. I usually kind of listen to the panelists, what they're talking about, look at what people are asking, and I form my questions as we go. Mostly, I just want to hear you talk. So you don't want to hear me talk. We're here to learn from the 4 of you. So let's start with Karelia. Is that, am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes, you
Okay.
are pronouncing it correctly. It rhymes with Australia, if anyone needs a mnemonic. And I had already been writing sapphic rom-coms set in Portland, which is a kind of quirky city. And one day I was stopping by a little bookstore that I liked, and the owner was going to give me a kombucha starter. So if you have never made kombucha, the starter looks like a glob of mucus. It's called a SCOBY. It looks like a glob of mucus. So she had it in a little jar for me, and so I had my jar of mucus, and she hadn't put a lid on it. And then it was pouring rain, so I was wet, and I had this jar of mucus. But we live about an hour south, so I wanted to go to the sex toy store, and I was not going to let the rain or the mucus stop me. So I went to the sex toy store, my favorite, She-Bop in Portland. They do ship. And because the dog had chewed up her favorite vibrator. So I went into the store and they started telling me about the vibrator that I was holding. And I was like, no, you don't have to tell me about it. It's my favorite, but my dog chewed it up. And they're like, oh yeah, they love the silicone. And so there I was, soaking wet with my mucus, talking about dogs eating vibrators. And I was like, this is too good. This is too good. I have to write a story that captures all of this quirky Portlandia.
That was an incredible story. That's hilarious. I love it. Sorry about that, Elia, but you're up next.
I can't follow
I
this
know.
in any
You have
way.
to kind
Like,
of
just
segue and look the other way for a minute and then come back.
that was amazing. So just jump cut, imagine. So Combustion is an interesting book for me because I actually wrote it much earlier in my career and published it. It was published with a small press. And then when the small press eventually closed, the rights reverted back to me and I was able to like revisit it and repolish it and put a new cover on it. And so it was neat to revisit a book that I'd written fairly early in my career, later in my career. And it's I tend to write contemporary, but this is a like alternate universe steampunk. And I sort of created the universe around the idea of what would sex toys look like and be like in like a whole different world, um, where like you were sort of manufacturing them yourself. So I was thinking of like old school vibrators used to treat hysteria, but not quite so horrifying. And what would it be if this was like women centered? So the main character in that book, she does make toys for her clientele. And over the course of the book, her big invention is she invents the equivalent of a Sibian in her universe and is trying to market it mainstream in this somewhat conservative gas lamp steampunk society. And so it was like really unusual and different than anything I'd written, but so fun to envision these toys. And I'll pass it over to Ten.
That's so badass, like to be able to like build your own sex toys. I think if I was an engineer of any kind, like that would be my hobby, because I don't have enough hobbies already. So Happy Endings is my debut, and when I created this world of happy endings, I'm based in the DC area, DMV for those who live here. And that stands for DC, Maryland, Virginia, and not like where you'll get your driver's license. And I wanted to create a friend group. So I've always been an entrepreneur, and at that time I was like deep in the weeds of running Body Bookworms, which was my former subscription box that paired diverse romances with sex toys. And I wanted to give all of the friend group sex positive careers. And I thought, since like I have a background in selling sex toys and sex education, like write what you know. And also I had read like so many romances by then that nobody ever used lube. I'm just like, you cannot have anal sex with zero lube. Okay. That sounds not sexy and not fun. And I was determined to include lube in this book, and just include like fun ways to use toys, just to kind of say to readers, hey, it's normal, to use toys on your own without a partner or with a partner, but definitely like always keep that bottle of lube um, next to next to your bed or in your nightstand. Elia says, I have read horrible alternative solutions. Let me tell you, I cannot remember the name of the book, but there was a chocolate icing one for anal sex, and like that is no sugar, everybody, no sugar around the genital area, no matter what your genitals are. My sex educator hat is on. And if you're gonna have anal sex, unless this is your kink, like don't use brown colored lube things.
Okay, so the lube thing, I was in the beginning of Satisfaction Guaranteed, right? She has having a problem with sex toys because she just keeps just stuffing them in herself. She's like, no prep, no anything. Talk a little bit about that, Karelia.
Well, I loved writing an inexperienced character because it gave me a chance to quietly educate the readers. I love romance because folks will come to romance for the fun read, and then they'll learn something along the way, something they might not have gone looking for. I got a really touching email from a woman who had read Satisfaction Guaranteed, and she said she was turning 70 and she had always thought that she was sexually broken, that there was something wrong with her. And she read the book, and then she read the suggested reading list at the end of the book, and she said she realized that her sexual experience was completely, it was how women are. There was normal, not that, you know, we're all striving for normal, but that there was absolutely nothing wrong with her. And this was how most women were when people with clitorises and vaginas were hooked up. And she was going to go out and try to enjoy some of what she had learned. And I absolutely loved that. So that's why I love that sexually inexperienced character. And the chance to do a little education along the line, along the road, and with her. And I learned a lot too when I started writing the book. One of the characters teaches sexual education classes, not like high school sex ed, but pleasure education. So I went to some at our favorite sex toy store up in Portland, and this was pre-COVID, so they were in person, and I picked them based on which ones fit my work schedule. And so I went to some stuff I wouldn't have gone to otherwise. And it was really cool. It was really cool to get to be in that role of someone who doesn't know. And it was also really, I'm a teacher too, so it was really cool to go and see how much it was kind of like my classes, like there was a worksheet and there were course outcomes. And when she get to one of the fill in the blanks on the worksheet, she's like, now hint, this might be the answer to number 5. And it was absolutely adorable because it was so normal and not weird and not uncomfortable.
Was that the class on spanking?
That was the class on spanking.
Faye, I think you should talk a little bit about that. I know it's a segue, but just like, let's go over here and talk about the spanking class. I'd love to learn more about that.
It was in public. It was there was a demonstration up front. This is how you do it. This is what you should be mindful of. This is what you could be thinking about. I mean, it was really well done.
Same,
Um,
is it the same store, this Shebop?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Chairs lined up closer than we are now with complete strangers and a demonstration out front and anyone taking audience volunteers. It was, well, I was out of my comfort zone, but I was glad I did it. Yeah, it was something to be in that space
I
and
love it.
to be learning from educators. Yeah, for sure.
I love it. All right. Did I hear someone else speak? Nobody? All right. Let's move on a little bit. Let's see. I don't have any. So don't forget to put your questions or comments in the Q&A so we can work those in instead of waiting until at the end. If we can, I'd love to have questions throughout and we can work them into the conversation. So if you have some questions, throw them into the Q&A. Talk a little bit about, Elia, talk about the kind of research you did since yours, I think it's 1914, World Fair, about that time. So her main character wants to have an invention in the World Fair, but she's a woman, and so she can't just be a part of that because, you know, woman. And there's this guy that she hates because he doesn't realize how privileged he is and how he gets to do these things because women aren't allowed to, not because he's any better than she is at whatever it is they do. And so she has to have support though. And so she wants him to help her get into this World Fair. Can you talk a little bit about the research you had to do for that? Because I feel like research seems to be a big part of all of these books, whether it's going to sex classes or what else. So just give me a little bit about the background of research you had to do for somebody who wanted to make the toys and about the World's Fair during that time.
So I'm going to offer a big disclaimer with a bit of a caveat in that part of like inventing this alternate reality was so that I could play fast and loose with technology, history, social norms, all of it. And so it's very much this tweaked, idealized, stylized, early era, like London setup. And like right now I'm actually writing a much more, I'm writing a historical women's fiction on queer women in World War II. who were, I'm specifically writing about pigeoneers in the Second World War, which is just the deepest rabbit hole of weird niche content that I would have never imagined going into. Combustion, I was able to like really like play with the time period a lot more. But more I was looking for inspiration as to like, what is the feel of this sort of event? Like a World's Fair is something that like, we may have various equivalents, but are we're so like you've got your tech expos and your sex toy expos and all different things, but um we don't have the same culminating worldwide, agreed, very Eurocentric, but showcase of inventions. And I want to see like what would this be like? Like, and so envisioning what would the setup for this sort of thing be like, and how do you play with like new technology in an older social structure? So yes, she needs to get sponsored. She doesn't realize she has to get sponsored by an existing established businessman to exhibit at the World's Fair to enter their contest. And so she ends up partnering with Eli, who owns a shop of gadgetry and such, but is very like straight laced, and he's my much more conservative character. Um, but he's the one that gives her the license to be able like with his good name, she can exhibit at the fair. But of course, social structures are never quite as easily permeated as that. So not very much research for that, research for a lot of other things, but still really fun along the way.
Thien-Kim, what about you? What kind of research did you do, since yours was more sex education? But also, man, there's a great scene in there when she has, I think, two sex toys she's working with, like towards the beginning. Like this was just, and you talk a lot about lube, and just different types of lube too. Like what kind of research did you do to be a sex educator in general, let alone to put this kind of stuff in the book?
Yeah, I became a sex educator kind of by accident. I was right out of college and was living in Syracuse, New York, and I was just like couldn't find like access to sex toys in with spaces that felt safe and comfortable. And we had found like one of those in-home party places, and the woman had come, and she was very shy, and she did all right. And I complained about it the whole time, like, she should have said this and that. And I'd done a lot of research on the internet. This is over 20 years ago. So before the information was not as easily accessible. And my fiance, now husband, said, "Why don't you start selling sex toys?" And I said, "Okay." And then so I didn't know much about sales, but the company that I was working with, they had a lot of educational resources, and we would have conferences and stuff like that. And that was my favorite part, was like meeting people when I did my parties to sell the products. And like Karelia was saying, like when you realize that what you're experiencing, like you're not alone and that you're not broken, it's like such a huge thing when you're learning to get comfortable with your sexuality and you're exploring your pleasure, that because of the way like society is, it's very cis male centered, and that pleasure education does not prioritize um, women or femme bodies, right? It's all about a cis man and his body. So I think like helping people kind of like switch, flip the switch and think about like what can I do to make myself feel good, that doesn't necessarily have to worry about my male partner, because like people with penises, like their stuff has been there out there hanging out and they've probably been playing with it since they were young. And those of us who have vulvas, things are a little bit more hidden. There's more shame around touching yourself. And I think that's was one of what drew me into sex education, was really, especially as an Asian woman. I'm a child of immigrants. We didn't talk about sex. Like I didn't know, I still don't know the correct names for my body parts in Vietnamese, because they're all euphemism, because that's not something they taught. Um, so I put myself in that journey. I thought, when I write this book, like, why don't I share some of these other things? Because it's just as important. And like Karelia and Elia, they do in their books. When you're reading about it, you kind of remember it a little bit better. And not everybody is comfortable enough to go to a place where they do lessons and worksheets, or that's not accessible to them.
I want to jump in and say how much that the education piece, I've been thinking about that as everyone's been talking. It so matters, because it's true that this, whether we like it or not, a lot of people, especially young people, they learn about sex through the internet or through reading. And that might be porn, and it might be fan fiction, and it might be romance novels, and it might be any sort of other thing. And um and I think that, like, that's always on my mind when I'm writing, is that this might be how people are learning about this. And so even if I want to idealize something, I do feel like there's a responsibility to be mindful of how much I'm stretching reality in that.
Love that very much. Feel free, anyone, jump in if you need to jump in. All right. Let's talk about a little bit of research in your books, Karelia and Fay.
Well, I had a wonderful experience researching for Satisfaction Guaranteed. And then when Faye and I started writing, she is the researcher. So I don't know that you did. Well, I'll let you speak for yourself.
Well, there wasn't a lot of sexual references or research that I did for Second Night Stand, but it's a ballet and burlesque protagonist, and I had to research ballet and burlesque. So burlesque took me down a fun path. So we went to we did attend burlesque performances, tried to understand that art form, tried to get those details right. Same thing with ballet. I had to watch a lot of lots of dance TV shows, do a lot of research online, talk to people who dance about the physicality of bodies, where limbs go, where body parts go, and those sorts of things. So that was really fun. Um, in our latest, I don't think I did too much research. That's about cooking. So different,
I
different.
feel like you can still do sex research for cooking. Like,
I think
just
so too. I mean, there was some innuendo, there was some
right, just
language.
work the sex research into everything. Is what I say. Like,
I,
just
I
do
think you're
it.
right.
You never know when you're going to use it for something else. We had a couple questions. The first one is, what are there some female-owned sex toy stores, and who do you recommend?
We've got two in Oregon here. We have Shebop, our favorite up in Portland. And then down in Eugene, we have, oh my gosh, it's a Shakespeare reference. As You Like It?
Yes, that's it.
As You Like It. And that is um, woman owned and also environmentally focused, which isn't something that I usually think of when I think about sex toys, but that's really cool.
Looks like they're looking also for female-owned sex toy companies. There's actually a lot. Um, Dame was female founded. I think recently they do have investors who do not identify as female, but the team is predominantly female. There is also Lioness. Lioness, is that the one with the app, Elia? Do you remember?
I haven't reviewed anything from,
So that
I
one
know,
is,
yeah.
yeah, I'm like Googling. I think that one is um BIPOC owned. The one of the founders is an engineer, and they engineer the motor for the vibrator. Um, and then I mean, there's a lot like Blush. One of the partners is a woman. Blush Novelties. So there's quite a bit out there. And there's another. Oh gosh, there's another one where one of the co-founders is also designs the motors for it, which I love like seeing, because um they're the ones. Thank you, Billy, for the links. Yeah. No, I haven't used the Lioness one, but it has an app where you can measure your orgasms, which for me, I'm like, I don't know if I want to measure everything. For me, that kind of takes the fun out of it. So, but there are definitely a lot. I will try to pull some more up and drop links, but there's a good bit. Um, um, Sport Sheets is also women owned. And they have been doing a really great job of being more inclusive in their packaging by adding more people of color, people larger sizes. Because I remember talking to them about that. So when I was running Body Bookworms, I actually went to a lot of um, like events where they would bring in like a bunch of different sex toy companies, and you could talk to their reps and see the products close at hand. And someone asked if I got swag. We got such great swag. Such great swag that I'm not going to complain. But the cool part was like the reps like really took feedback. So there's a lot of people who own stores all over, and there are a lot of stores out there who are women owned. But we could give feedbacks like our customers are looking for this in the toy. This toy, like the buttons were too slippery, and they would actually like take the feedback really seriously and go back and try to like improve on the toys.
We have a local shop that I really love here in Western Massachusetts called Oh My, and I've been an Oh My aficionado since I was definitely 18. I was definitely not 17. I was definitely 18 in college, and they went through like several name iterations and reopenings, and it's a mother-daughter team who run this shop. And they're just lovely people to work with. And I appreciate that great list of like I review for a million companies, and I I just can't keep track. And the fact that you know them off the top of your head, and even with a little Google, that was super impressive.
The other question, and Thien-Kim had mentioned that they wanted to know when you go to sex toy conferences, do you get swag?
Yes, so much. Lots of not just like toys and lube, but like I have some shopping bags that have vibrators, like illustrations on them, which I don't take to my local grocery store. I don't know how my kids would feel about that if I took that with me. But we also got like keychains, and there are keychains that are like mini whips. I remember including those in one of my Body Bookworms boxes on just like super fun stuff like enamel pins. So it wasn't all just vibrators, which I think like when you've been in the industry long enough, you're like, okay, another vibrator. There's only so many you can use at one time.
Speaking of using vibrators more than one at one time. Well, in Tin Kim's book and Happy Endings, I think I want to say it was towards the beginning of the book when we first see her use them. I thought she used more than one uh, because she had a special one that she used towards the end. Is that right? Am I remembering that correctly?
I think at the beginning there's a masturbation scene where she uses a dual stimulation toy. So one is inserted, and then it has a outer part for external stimulation. But I wanted to write that one because it's just masturbation, and she's thinking about um the ex that she ran into, and she's like, I'm not looking to fall back into the old trap, so I'll just use my toy instead and try to get him out of my system.
All right, let me see if there's any more questions, and make sure if there's some topic you all want to talk about that we just speak up. It says, do you draw more inspiration from personal experience or imagination?
Imagination. I would say probably my sex life would be boring compared to my books. Because the situation is different, and you just want to like write scenes that are different from the other things, so I try to make them a little more exciting.
I draw inspiration from some parts of my life, but mostly like in character design and personality traits, and like conversations about people's deepest fears that I'm always harvesting for book material. Sorry to all of my friends. But most of it is like just stuff I'm making up. Although when I'm writing toys in the books, they're usually like I'm writing toys I'm familiar with.
think there's anything in our books that we haven't done. That's right. That's right. It's yeah. Yeah.
So we could do all the things right now, like just get all the books. Here's a link to all of their books right here. I love that. But is it something that comes where you're writing and how do you decide what to include? Like, it's something you've done, but how do you know this is the one thing that you've done that works for this book? Like, how do you do that in your writing?
Well, I'll just talk about one that our most recent one. There's a kind of a scene um in it, and I mean, maybe this has happened to other people. Maybe it's not just me, but sometimes when I touch technology, it breaks or it changes, or the vibrator that you thought was quiet all of a sudden is so loud. And so there's a situation where our characters are in the same house but in separate bedrooms. One can't sleep and is trying to work off some frustration and gets out this vibrator, and it's so loud, and she's worried about the other one in the next room hearing what she's doing. And so I'm not saying that ever happened in our house or anything like that, but a pillow can be helpful in this situation. So that was fun. That was fun to write.
Is there someone else talking? Did I hear something? No? Okay. Well, trying to think of what else I wanted to talk about. So because we have one book that's sapphic, and the other two are not. Talk about and I don't think I saw any of your books, Karelia, they were all sapphic, the ones that I've seen, right? But Elia, I think you've written both. You've written both sapphic and whatever it's called when there's not sapphic. I'm just kidding. And I think Thien-Kim, I think yours are always. I think I've read 3 of yours. I think they're always.
Yes, my male-female pairings, though the something cheeky, the female main character is demisexual.
Okay. Put that down. How do you decide on that? So this is not really toy based, but it is writing based. And I know people also want to know about your writing processes. Those are always questions, books you recommend, all of that kind of stuff. Really, this toy list is fantastic. Like Toy Shops is good. If you have a favorite toy, that's also something we would want to know about. But how do you, when you're looking at that, when you have, I think your last 2 books, Karelia, the covers almost look like the 2 of you, or they vaguely reminded me of the 2 of you. So when you're writing stories that kind of represent the relationship you might be in, how much of that relationship goes into the writing of the story? And I know they say write what you know, but you also all just said you also write from your imagination. So like, what part of these stories or these characters represent you, and what part are just pure, I just want to see what happens?
I always say that Faye, the best part of all my romance heroines is something from Faye. The crazy part, the neuroses, the problems, the part where they act like a jerk, that's not her. But the best traits are all from her. So I'm a terrible romantic. There are idiosyncratic things that our characters do that some people in our household do as well. And so some pieces of that come through. We've been together for 27 years. We're talking about new love, but we are also talking about the components of a healthy relationship, healthy communication. How do you talk about sex? How do you, talk about, what's on your mind, the trust that they develop for each other, the concern that they have for each other as individuals, the place in the community and their family is also a big piece. So it's important things to us. And so those things are reflected in our writing and in our characters in the story arc. It's really important to me that the books I write reflect good communication as well as good sex. Something that if a reader were to take this as a model of how you treat another person, that they'd come up with a good relationship. I was reading a book by an author I really like, uh, but there was a third act breakup, and the characters were so cruel to each other that I couldn't believe that anyone who had been that cruel could then go on to have a healthy relationship. And I know that there's a lot of catharsis in that kind of sequence of scenes, and that's fine. That's good for some folks. For me, that's not something I feel comfortable writing, because maybe because I do think of all my heroines as having just a little bit of Fay in them, and I think I would never talk to her like that. I would never do that to her. So I like to go light on the third act breakup, but if it's there, it can't be cruel.
Did you want to add anything?
I'll say that, like, thinking about writing from life and how you, like, I think in some ways writing gives you the opportunity to process things that you're processing in your life, but I think it can be really tempting to read the author into the characters, which is a dangerous slope. But one of my trilogies is polyam, and I was writing they're predominantly male female polyam, um but when I was first conceiving and writing this trilogy was when my husband and I were exploring polyamory with someone we had suddenly found ourselves, like, deeply caring about, which was not, and loving in a way that we were not expecting, that completely changed the way we see our relationship. And so while it was a very different dynamic and situation, it had me, like thinking about all the things that make characters anxious. I think that comes across no matter what you're writing about. Like, we all know what it's like to be insecure and to have fears, and how that plays out in our writing, I think it can be a really neat way to process it, and sometimes really challenging too.
Yeah, and for me, when I'm creating characters, you know, I might take like personal snippets or about people I know and put into them, but by the time the character is fleshed out, they're their own person. And I don't know, I'm very private, so I don't usually put, specific instances or things in there, but I do share like in something cheeky, the character talking about being demisexual, that really was like my journey into learning more about my sexuality in that way. I do include little Easter eggs about things from my husband's relationship in the books, just for funsies and full exposure. The Mardi Gras romance. The meet cute is when Josie, the heroine, she's at a Mardi Gras parade, catches some beads and whacks a guy in the face with them. Um, when my husband and I were dating, we went to Mardi Gras and he caught the most beautiful beads and then smacked me in the eye with them. So I was like, someone said, "Oh wow, that's like you can't. That's like the most creative meet cute ever." I'm like, well, that actually kind of happened to me. I didn't make it up. So those are like the little things I put in there. But these characters, I want to give them a life of their own, and but also like try to make them to be good people in the end. And I have a hard time writing like super mean characters unless they're the villain.
Even when, I'd like enemies to lover, but I actually don't like it to be enemies, like, because sometimes they do write them so cruel you cannot imagine. Like, I don't want them to be together. Like, that doesn't seem like a good relationship start. I'd rather them be frenemies, or like they slightly dislike each other to lovers. Like they had an argument once when they were younger, but now they're okay, kind of thing. I was reading a book recently and they were so cruel in the beginning, just getting to know each other. I couldn't even finish the book. I'm like, this is just not something I don't want to see them get together. Like this seems like it's not my kind of book that I want to read. So I appreciate that. And I I'm gonna try to figure out like I have the Mardi Gras book and I think I read that one a while ago too. Like I'm gonna go, I think that was Full Exposure. Was that the one? Yes. Okay. I'll go back and look at that one. Like I'm like, I feel like I remember that part of that. So that's cool to know that that was an actual true story. It's always fun to talk to authors and you realize what's true and what's actually happened. It just gives you kind of a bigger appreciation for the story. But we have one more question. It says, can any of the writers say if they plan to write any books with male characters using sex toys? So I feel like I see this in queer or male-male romances, but a lot less so with straight male characters. Do you think there is an even bigger stigma for men to use sex toys?
Well, I'll start. So in Happy Endings, this is a semi-spoiler, but Trixie uses a sleeve, a vibrating sleeve on Andre during a sex scene. Um, so I don't know, there's a stigma. I think a lot of romances are written for the female gaze. So that is the main focus. I think if you're looking, I can't think of anything on top of my head, but if you're going to more like erotic romance where the power dynamic is different, you're going to see more sex toy use on straight men. And maybe, I don't know, Elia, I know you've written, or maybe you have some recommendations in that area.
I'm like running through my list in my head. So Combustion definitely does have a butt plug scene. And I think and when I write power dynamics, when I write kink, it's again it's the polyam trilogy and the men in it are bisexual. And so we're not talking about like scenes with straight men specifically. So not off the top of my head beyond that. I do think the point about like there are fewer awesome toys for penises. Like there are some great ones out there, but there aren't as many. And I think that there's a lot of stigma and also knowledge required to do any kind of anal play safely. So I think there's I want to say barriers to entry, and I'll just let the pun stand.
And also for me when I'm writing characters and they haven't been together before, like I feel like anal play is like a more advanced part of a relationship because it requires a lot of trust. So that might not be something that would show up in the type of relationships that I'm writing, but I'll keep it in mind for something in the future.
All right. Any other questions or anything that you thought you wanted to make sure we mention or go over before we're at 6:55, before we start wrapping it up? Anyone want to talk about what are you working on right now and maybe what's next for you? No one's working on anything?
Okay, I'll pull the pause and then I'll let it in. So I've got the Pigeoneers book that I'm working on slowly, it's coming along. But also I have a book that my agent is shopping right now, which is called Sex, Texts, and Sweater Vests, and it's a kinky contemporary reimagining of a Scarlet Pimpernel story. And so it's being shopped right now, and I'm hoping I really love it. It's a little bit silly and a lot of fun, and I'm really hoping it finds a home.
Wish I was a publisher. We need some fun. Like I'm looking for some fun, and that title is everything for me. So We'll figure it
Um,
out.
I am working on a proposal, and that's also going to be shopped around. It's a heist romance, and a sapphic heist romance with a Vietnamese American character. So
Yes.
I love me a good
Same.
heist story. So I'm super excited. And then I'm on my side project a is a fantasy novel. So I don't have enough details to share yet, but working on that.
I am trying to decide what genre to explore right now. So I've got ideas for a lot of different things, including a sort of a apocalyptic, another contemporary romance, and also I'm just tiptoeing into the idea of cozy
You fine.
cozy mystery. I work at a community college, and there are just so many fabulously bizarre people that I work with, and just funny things about the setting that I really want to find someone dead in the surplus storage, uh, units outside the campus. But I haven't fully conceptualized how I will write it without everyone knowing exactly who I'm basing the characters off. And Faye has a cool new project too.
Yeah, I'm working on raising up a public speaking business. I plan on retiring from my very demanding job in 2 years, so that's what I'm working on.
That's amazing. All right, one book you recommend before we go.
Oh, I have one that Faye has heard me rave about too many times. Someone to Build a Nest in.
Yes, agreed.
For Her Consideration by Amy Spalding.
We read that one too. Okay.
I recently read the first two books, Joe Segura's series, Raiders of the Lost Heart. And oh gosh, they're all like plays on Indiana Jones movies. Raiders of the Lost Heart and Temple of Swoon. Oh, they're fantastic.
I read the first one. I haven't read the second one yet.
The second one, the female main character is like awkward and clumsy, and I don't know. I'm kind of a clumsy person, so I liked her.
I recently just finished Let's Make a Scene by Laura Wood, which I thought was did the enemies to lovers so well. It was like second chance jumping back and forth in time. So you have like them young and hot-headed and them like now 13 years later. And the chemistry was off the charts. I listened to it on audio and it was a total delight.
Okay, listening to romance on audio, I cannot decide if I like it or not. It's like I'm always thinking someone can hear it, even if I'm wearing headphones. And it's like I know that my face is changing when certain scenes come. I'm like, somebody has to hear this. This is like I'm gonna turn it really way down. It's like that's always fun when you're driving and you suddenly stop. It's like hi. But I want to thank everybody. Thank all of you for being here. Thank you to all the people who showed up for us. There is one more question, but it's almost 7, and I have to go see Les Mis today at 7:30, so I can't stay too long. And it's like all the way downtown, so I got to run downtown from the store. But somebody wanted to know, do you think 50 Shades of Grey opened up it's like, I don't think it did, but how do you feel about 50 Shades of Grey being the breakthrough book to make sex toys approachable?
I hope that everyone who got into sex toys via 50 Shades of Grey has found better examples of
Yes,
consent
yes.
and sexual dynamics. I will say in my cohort of sex toy manufacturers and store owners is that Benoit Balls sold out of all their stores, and they could not get it in the store fast enough when 50 Shades of Grey came out.
Um, as a kinkster, I think my first book, Purely Professional, might not have found a home as readily if 50 Shades hadn't made it easier to get things published that way. And however people got into the genre, I'm glad they're here.
Anybody else? Okay. Billy, you want to come back?
Yes. Hi. Thank you all so much for being here. Really happy that we were able to make this panel happen after a year. Thank you to everyone who attended. We have 4 events tomorrow, so check out what's coming up and sign up for 1 or 2 more. It's a great way to spend a Sunday afternoon talking about romance novels. I will be sending out an email at some point. I need to sleep at some point. That will have a link to watch the recording of this, as well as all of the shops and manufacturers that were discussed, plus all of the books that were just recommended here at the end. So you'll just get a plethora of links. Thank you all so much for coming. Have a great evening. Kathy, enjoy Les Mis. And I hope to see some of you tomorrow. Good night.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. I appreciate all of you. Thank you. And thank you,
Thank
Billy,
you.
for letting me do this.